Part 1. The incident that shattered everything I've always known. California neighborhoods had their quirks. Composting rules, driveway etiquette, rogue squirrels. But I never thought our HOA would straight up lock my wife in their car. It was a sunny Thursday in Glendale. My wife Maria had just returned from her morning walk, earbuds in, humming some old Shakira song. Our 15-year-old son, Jacob, was inside gaming, half listening for the garage door so he could pretend he was studying. That's when she showed up. Karen Delaney, HOA president, HOA tyrant, HOA menace in pastel cardigans. She pulled up in her silver Lexus hybrid, looking like Stepford had sent her to enforce moral order. Apparently, Maria had unknowingly violated a visual harmony clause by wearing a bright orange windbreaker. "You're disturbing the aesthetic continuity of the block," Karen sneered. Maria laughed, thinking it was a joke. It was not. Karen demanded she get in the car to discuss the matter formally. Maria, being polite to a fault, got in. Karen hit the lock button, then drove 30 feet forward, and refused to let her out. Inside, Jacob heard yelling, then a muffled honk, then his mother's voice rising in pitch. That was all it took. The boy was out the door in 10 seconds flat. What happened next became something of a legend in our neighborhood. He reached the Lexus just as Karen was rolling up the windows. Maria was pounding on the inside, yelling, "Open the door!" Jacob didn't hesitate. He grabbed the door handle. When it didn't open, he planted both feet on the curb and ripped. With a metallic screech and a pop that startled even the neighbor's cat 6 houses down, the door gave way. Karen screamed. Maria stumbled out, wide-eyed but safe. And Jacob? He stood there, breathing hard, holding half a Lexus door like it was a medieval shield. Karen called the police. So did I. They arrived at the same time. She shouted about property damage and juvenile aggression. I shouted about unlawful restraint and literal kidnapping. The officers took statements. One of them kept looking at the detached door in disbelief. Karen's story started to crumble when Maria, calm and composed despite her ordeal, told them, "She locked me in. I asked to get out multiple times." Body cam footage captured Jacob saying, "I thought she was in danger, so I got her out." No, it didn't take long. Karen was placed under arrest for false imprisonment. The neighbors? They watched from their porches like it was the season finale of Desperate Housewives, HOA edition. Part 2. The Fallout, the Flamingos, and the Furious. Karen Delaney spent exactly 20 minutes in the back of a squad car before she posted bail. Paid for, we later found out, by the HOA's Emergency Legal Defense Fund. That tidbit alone nearly caused a riot at the next board meeting. By Friday morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. HOA Facebook groups were on fire. Someone uploaded ring footage of Jacob's door-yanking moment, and within hours it was stitched into a TikTok montage with dramatic music and the words "Florida Man Energy, California Edition." The video hit 3.2 million views by lunch. Meanwhile, Karen tried to do damage control. She released a statement that began with, "I deeply regret the confusion caused by my actions, which were always rooted in community standards and a deep respect for vehicular boundaries." Vehicular boundaries. Even her own husband reportedly laughed. But the real chaos began when the HOA called an emergency meeting Saturday morning in the clubhouse. Naturally, I showed up. So did half the zip code. And Tyler. With popcorn. Karen, back in her usual pink cardigan and air of superiority, stood at the podium as if nothing had happened. "I'd like to remind the community," she began, "that bright clothing, acts of aggression, and spontaneous vehicle destruction are not consistent with the tone of our neighborhood." A hand shot up. Mrs. Flanagan, 84 years old and sharper than a cactus in July. "Is false imprisonment consistent with the tone?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Karen's eyes twitched. "The situation has been legally misunderstood." "We all saw the video, Karen," someone shouted. And then, the flamingo incident. Apparently, Karen had placed 2 decorative flamingos in front of the clubhouse for calming energy. Tyler, in teenage protest glory, had photoshopped one of them holding a sign that said, "Free Maria." He printed 200 copies and passed them out like concert flyers. It was petty. It was glorious. Karen threatened to sue. Someone else threatened to nominate her for HOA president again, just to watch her lose. As we walked home, Jacob turned to me and asked, "So, what happens next?" I looked at him and smiled. "Next, son, we let the internet do what it does best." Part 3. Viral Justice and HOA Meltdown. By Sunday morning, the door-ripping video had been re-uploaded so many times, it had its own fan edit. Jacob's slow-motion grunt was now set to dramatic violins, followed by Karen's shriek remixed into dubstep. Internet justice was having a moment. Even local news caught on. A cheerful anchor on Channel 8 said, "In today's Only in California segment, a teen saves his mom from an overzealous HOA president by going full Hulk on a Lexus. Maria, bless her, just wanted to go back to gardening. But people kept showing up to take selfies in front of our house. The HOA issued an emergency bulletin begging residents to stop tagging the clubhouse in memes. Meanwhile, Jacob's school counselor asked if he needed to speak to someone about rage issues. Jacob replied, deadpan, only if it involves HOA trauma. But the real kicker? We got a call from a civil rights attorney. Turns out what Karen did wasn't just false imprisonment. It could be tried as unlawful restraint with malicious intent, especially since Maria was coerced into the car under threat of HOA violation. And since the incident went viral, the DA was now watching. Karen doubled down. She filed a counter lawsuit against Jacob. Yes, a 15-year-old, for intentional destruction of private property. When the lawsuit hit our mailbox, Maria burst out laughing. Does she think she can scare us with paperwork? I said, she locked you in a car. She'll try anything. Our lawyer prepared the response. But that wasn't even the wildest thing that week. At the next HOA board meeting, 3 members resigned. One cited personal ethics. Another mumbled something about not wanting to be included in documentaries. Karen stood alone at the head of the room. And that's when a neighbor, Paul, usually quiet, khaki shorts and Crocs kind of guy, stood up and said, I move to disband the HOA permanently. Gasps, whispers, applause. And in the corner, Jacob smiled like a kid who just watched the villain monologue too long. Part 4. Courtroom chaos and a very public apology. The lawsuit Karen filed against Jacob lasted exactly 6 minutes in small claims court. The judge looked at the footage, glanced at Jacob, who showed up wearing a "Respect Your Mother," especially if she's locked in a Lexus, t-shirt, and said, case dismissed. Karen stormed out like a soap opera villain whose final line got cut. But the real action began the following week. The district attorney officially filed criminal charges, false imprisonment, coercion, and abuse of authority under a neighborhood governance role. Karen was served papers while pruning her roses. A neighbor filmed it. Someone added dramatic music. The video hit 2.7 million views. Meanwhile, the petition to disband the HOA? It picked up steam. Over 400 residents signed it. Maria was invited to speak at the city council meeting. Jacob tagged along wearing sunglasses indoors like he was in the witness protection program. Maria's speech was short, heartfelt, and devastating. I was locked in a car for wearing the wrong color windbreaker. That's not community spirit. That's tyranny with a pamphlet. Thunderous applause. By Friday, the city announced it would audit the HOA's conduct and suspend their authority until further review. Karen responded by doing the only thing she knew. She wrote a newsletter, 4 pages, all Comic Sans, titled, The Real Victim, A Journey of Misunderstood Leadership. The neighborhood printed copies, folded them into paper airplanes, and launched them at the clubhouse during sunset. One got stuck in a tree. Karen tried to retrieve it with a broom. The broom snapped. Someone clapped. Jacob? He was too busy being interviewed by BuzzFeed. The headline the next day, I was just trying to save my mom, not end the HOA. Teen door ripper speaks. Sorry, Part 5. Karen on trial and the return of the door. Karen's trial was scheduled for early spring. The courthouse was packed. Local news trucks lined the street like it was a celebrity scandal. Someone even sold shirts outside that said, Team Jacob, doors don't stand a chance. Maria and I sat quietly near the front. Jacob, he wore a collared shirt, jeans, and that same calm teenage expression that said, I could be home gaming right now, but okay. Karen's defense was creative. Her lawyer claimed she had a nervous condition that triggered when she saw neon colors, causing her to involuntarily lock car doors. The judge blinked slowly. So your client suffers from color-induced kidnapping? Yes, Your Honor. Noted. Then came the prosecution. They showed video evidence, witness testimonies. They brought in Maria, who calmly recounted the whole experience. Then Jacob. Why did you pull the door off the car? The DA asked. Jacob shrugged. My mom was locked inside. She sounded scared, so I got her out. Did you consider the consequences? No, just the outcome. The jury smiled. One even nodded. But the moment that broke the courtroom came when the prosecution wheeled in. The actual Lexus door. Yes, someone preserved it. It stood on a custom display stand like a museum piece, labeled Exhibit D the door. Gasps. Karen muttered something about dramatics. Her lawyer asked to take a short walk. He never came back. 2 days later, the verdict came in. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Karen to 14 months probation, community service, and, this part was poetic, mandatory anger management and HOA ethics retraining. The courtroom applauded. A bailiff whispered, "This is better than Netflix." Outside reporters swarmed. One asked Jacob if he had any final words. He looked dead at the camera and said, "Next time, maybe just knock on the door, not trap someone behind one." Meek dropped. Part 6. The Aftermath and the HOA's Last Breath. 3 weeks after the trial, things in our neighborhood started to shift. For the better. Gone were the passive-aggressive newsletters and Comic Sans. Gone were the HOA surprise inspections. Gone, even, were the decorative flamingos. Someone left a tiny chalk outline where they stood. Karen was, legally, still in the neighborhood, but her power was gone. Her title stripped. Her mailbox quietly filled with HOA resignation memes. One was just a drawing of a Lexus door waving goodbye. The city council, spurred by Maria's speech, officially voted to dissolve the current HOA board and install a community oversight committee, volunteer-based, transparent, and incapable of locking people in cars. Jacob returned to school a hero. His nickname? Doorbreaker. The wrestling team tried to recruit him. He declined. Said he'd only compete if the final round involved HOA bylaws. Maria got flowers from strangers. One woman wrote, "Thank you for surviving what we've only fantasized about," standing up to Karen. Even local businesses joined in. A bakery released limited edition Door Smash donuts. A yoga studio offered free decompress from Karen sessions. And the Lexus dealership sent us a $500 voucher with a handwritten note. No hard feelings. That was impressive. Karen, meanwhile, started a blog titled HOA Survivor, My Truth. It had 3 readers. One was clearly her dog. But the biggest moment came when Jacob was nominated for a Civic Courage Award by the mayor's office. We attended a ceremony downtown. Lights, applause, speeches. And when Jacob took the stage, he didn't gloat. He just said, "I did what any kid would do for their mom. I just happened to break a car door while doing it." The room erupted in laughter, and then a standing ovation. Part 7, Redemption, Retirement, and a Ridiculous Parade. It started with a flyer on our porch. Neighborhood Celebration Parade, honoring local hero Jacob Reyes, a.k.a. the Doorbreaker. This Saturday. Wear orange. Yes, orange, the very windbreaker color that started it all. By Friday, every house on the block had hung orange ribbons. Someone painted a mural of Jacob high-fiving a flamingo. And Karen, she installed blackout curtains. Saturday came. The parade began with a marching band made up entirely of middle schoolers in orange hoodies. Local firefighters waved from their trucks. One had a cardboard cutout of a Lexus door taped to the ladder. Maria rode in a convertible, waving like the queen she was. I walked beside her, shaking hands and dodging confetti. Jacob brought up the rear in a golf cart labeled Emergency Door Unit. He wore sunglasses, a hoodie, and a smirk. And the best part, halfway down the block, standing awkwardly behind her fence, was Karen. She held a mug that read, "Kin misunderstood," and tried not to make eye contact. One of the kids tossed her a donut. It hit her shoulder. She didn't flinch, but she did eat it. After the parade, the city announced the street would be renamed for one day only, Heroes Row. The press was there. Interviews were given. Memes were born. But what struck me most was what Jacob said that night. We were sitting on the porch, the orange decorations still glowing faintly in the breeze. He turned to me and said, "Dad, I don't think I want to be famous, but I do like knowing I did something right." I put an arm around him. "You did more than something right, kid. You reminded people that doing the right thing, especially when it's hard, is what makes a real hero." He smiled, quiet and content, then added, "Still not joining the wrestling team, though." Part 8. The door closes, another opens. Summer arrived quietly, like it was tiptoeing in after all the chaos. Our neighborhood settled into something new, something better, a place where people said good morning without squinting at your flower beds. Karen? She quietly sold her house. Rumor had it she moved to a gated community in Nevada. No HOA, just a cul-de-sac with strong opinions and weak Wi-Fi. She left behind a half-empty garden, a cracked bird bath, and a copy of her memoir, Flamingo Justice, The Untold Story. It was marked down to $3.99. Maria returned to her daily walks, this time wearing neon pink and orange and lime green, sometimes all three at once. No one said a word. A few people even complimented her. Jacob's fame faded as it should. He went back to being a teenager, still called doorbreaker by a few teachers, but mostly just Jacob. He joined the school robotics team instead of wrestling. And me, I built a little bench out of scrap wood and the remains of a certain Lexus door. It sits under the big oak tree in our front yard. A small plaque on it reads, "In honor of doing what's right, even when it means breaking a few things." Neighbors sometimes sit on it. No one ever complains. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the world turned soft and golden, Maria sat beside me on that bench. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked. I thought about everything. Jacob's strength, Karen's downfall, the donuts, the laughter, the anger, the growth. "Maybe not over," I said, "but better." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, the only thing that broke the silence was birdsong.